This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets. Oil prices rose slightly on Monday as traders remained cautious despite receding fears of a recession in the US, which drove prices down for 3 straight weeks for the first time since November. Brent crude futures were up 11 cents, or 0.2%, at $75.41 a barrel at 0252 GMT. US West Texas Intermediate, WTI, crude futures were up 12 cents, also 0.2%, at $71.46. Oil's rebound follows energy stocks' comeback on Wall Street last Friday after the US reported strong job data, which eased concerns about an imminent economic recession that led to the sell-off early in the week, said Tina Teng, an analyst at CMC Markets.
Shares of Australian liquefied natural gas, LNG, producers rose on Monday after the government adopted more favourable than expected changes to petroleum tax, ensuring the load was shared across the industry and did not impact growth projects. Woodside Energy Group Limited, the country's biggest independent oil and gas producer, was trading 2.5% higher, while closest rival Santos Limited was up 1.5% as at 0249 GMT. Beach Energy Limited jumped 2.5%. Over the weekend, Australia announced plans to change its petroleum resource rent tax to increase the tax paid by the offshore LNG industry, moves that should increase revenue by 2.4 billion Australian dollars, $1.6 billion, over the next 4 fiscal years.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Russia this week took control of the Russian assets of Finland's Fortum and Germany's Uniper, which both operate power plants in Russia, and warned it could seize more. The two energy firms' shares were placed in the temporary control of Rossimoshestvo, the federal government property agency, and will be run by managers from Rosneft. Kremlin said the decision was taken in response to aggressive actions of unfriendly countries and mirrored attitude of Western governments towards foreign assets of Russian companies.
Israel approved on Sunday a plan to create an energy storage network in cities to produce off-peak electricity, which will also supply kosher electricity for ultra-Orthodox Jews observing the Sabbath. Demand for stored energy is on the rise worldwide as a way to use solar power at night and to help shift to electricity-based transport. In Israel, with a new government that has strong religious representation, there is an added interest for ultra-Orthodox communities that strictly observe Jewish law, including restrictions on electricity use on Saturdays, the Jewish Sabbath.
Next, we have the top news in metal markets.
Global gold demand fell in the first 3 months of 2023 as large purchases by central banks and Chinese consumers were offset by reduced investor buying, the World Gold Council, WGC, said on Friday. Total demand amounted to 1,081 tons, down 13% from the first quarter of 2022, the WGC said in its latest quarterly demand trends report. Around half of gold demand comes from jewelers, with investors and states responsible for most of the rest. Bullion is seen as a safe asset and investors often buy more during times of economic instability.
Benchmark iron ore futures in Singapore dipped on Monday, struggling below the $100 a ton mark under the weight of growing shipments from Australia and Brazil combined with the sluggish demand in top steel producer China. The steelmaking ingredients most traded June contract on the Singapore Exchange shed as much as 1.7% to hit $97.05 a ton. It slumped to $94.20 on Friday after data showed China's factory activity unexpectedly dipped in April, based on Caixin manufacturing PMI data, sending shockwaves through the market. We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector. The United Nations Food Agency's World Price Index rose in April for the first time in a year, but is still some 20% down on a record high hit in March 2022 following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Food and Agriculture Organization's FAO Price Index, which tracks the most globally traded food commodities, averaged 127.2 points last month against 126.5 for March, the the agency said on Friday. The March reading was originally given as 126.9. The Rome-based agency said the April rise reflected higher prices for sugar, meat and rice, which offset declines in the cereals, dairy and vegetable oil price indices.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.